GDG Cloud Boston and GDG Atlanta are proud to present a certification workshop series on the professional database engineer track. This is informal session number 1. During the informal sessions, we'll have office hours and a chance to any questions that have come up in the last week. And it'll be very informal. We will, next week we'll have, so every other week we have the formal presentations where Google has provided slides for us. So there are 6 of those in total. And then interspersed in between those, we have 5 informal sessions. And this is the first informal session. And so we'll see how many questions we have today. I do have some material that I can cover briefly, but mostly this is about giving you the ability to ask questions about anything that's come up. Next week, in our next formal session, I will do a review of the high points of some of the important things that have been brought out in the video lectures, in the video presentations from Google in Skills Boost, and then also we will discuss some of the what I think are important things that you should have learned from doing the labs, right? Okay, so I think it's fairly clear if you go through the labs what the point of them is, but I just have we'll take a step back and look at them all as a group and understand what's important that we've picked up from those things. Okay, so with that said, I'm Norbert Kremer of GDG Cloud Boston. Jessica Rudd is normally with us. She's an organizer at GDG Atlanta. She has another commitment this evening, so I'll be running the event solo tonight, and I will try to watch the chat as much as I can. I do see there's another question. Let me address that question about the data and the database cert. We did cover this a lot in the info session in June 11th, so you may want to go find that YouTube recording. But there is a fairly large distinction between the two. The database engineering that we're doing here is about essentially it's OLTP database systems like Cloud SQL. So think about MySQL, Postgres, running those on Google Cloud somehow. There's also a lot of coverage of the NoSQL offerings from Google Cloud, which includes Bigtable. We'll get to those later. There's also a database called AlloyDB, which is a combined row store and column store that has some very interesting features. It's a unique offering that only Google, I don't think any other vendor has anything like AlloyDB exactly. The main difference is that we don't cover BigQuery at all. And BigQuery is essential to really anybody that's using Google Cloud. You want to know something about BigQuery. If you're heavy into analytics and preparing data sets for machine learning, you're probably going to want to use BigQuery. We don't cover that in this series at all because it's just really too much to put into one track, and Google has divided the world of databases up such that BigQuery is considered an analytics product and not part of although it is a relational database management system, obviously, or as they call it, enterprise data warehouse. It is not classed with the other database products, so it is considered part of the analytics toolset. So I hope that's clear. I'm going to, yeah, Kasaba, was that a question about BigQuery? Yeah, BigQuery is not part of this certification at all. Yeah, BigQuery is not covered. There might be a stray question or two on this exam, but very, very little, if any. I would be surprised if there was any. And it's really, even if you look in Google Console, it's classed under analytics. It's not classed as part of the other database tools. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zip through the next slides pretty quickly, and then I'll have a Q&A period. And if anybody wants to interrupt me, just use the raise hand feature, please, because I'm having a little hard for me to watch the chat and normal normally Jessica would be helping me with that part of it, but I'm flying solo tonight, so bear with me. As always, our GDGs all observe a code of conduct. It's pretty simple in its spirit: be nice, respectful, and constructive, collaborative, and participate as you wish. And there's an official legalese version of that here at this URL. These slides will be published later, so you can grab the link off of the slides later, and we will also be publishing the video to YouTube before the end of the week. And the previous session YouTubes are already out on YouTube. They're under the GDG Cloud Boston, and there should be links in the in Slack. There are certainly links, and also I don't know if we posted the links onto the meeting and registration page, but definitely in Slack you'll find all the links that you need. So today, what are we going to talk about? We're going to do a little bit of a review of just these topics we've been talking about. It's like what is actually covered by the database engineer certification workshops. And so steps 1 and 2 here are covering that review. It's basically a review of what we did last week and the previous week, and then we'll have a sneak peek of some of the topics. Just an abbreviated sneak peek. We won't go through to the end of the course, but I'll give you the guideline that we're using to trying to maintain the schedule of activities throughout the next 10 weeks or so. Then we'll have the Ask Us Anything session, where really it can be anything related to this learning path or otherwise, and we will, if we don't have the answers, we meaning me, I guess, if I don't have the answer tonight, I'll take notes and we'll try to get back to you. I want to then give a little presentation, kind of a long lightning talk or a short length full talk, if you will. It's about a topic called Shuhari, which is the way that I approach training a group of people, such as in a group like this, or sometimes in a more formal setting where I'm actually doing instruction. We're not actually doing instruction here. We're providing coaching, guidance, and the ability to ask questions, but we're not actually formally going through all the material and presenting it because that's what Skills Boost is doing for us, providing the pre-recorded videos, so-called on-demand training, and then also the labs, obviously. But I do want to talk to you about Shuhari. I think it's an important idea that I learned about some 15 years ago, and I think it's not something that I hear people discussing very much, but I think you might like to learn about it. So we'll do that this evening, and then we'll have a wrap up and give pointers for next week. So let's dive in. So what we're doing in all these certification workshops is we're trying to go from textbook knowledge or book learning. We're trying to bring that down to expertise and job role excellence, and the way we do that is through obviously the video recordings that you've been watching, the video lessons, and then also, more importantly, probably the lab experience is critical to solidifying those skills, making them real, having that power of coding in your fingertips. And that's what, together with these sessions and the material on Skills Boost, that's what we're trying to accomplish here. So again, this is again relevant to what makes a database engineer. It's we try to give you in these learning paths enough breadth and also enough depth at the same time. So you need the breadth in order to know, have a good view of all of the possible solutions that are available within Google Cloud. Okay, and so there are at least 6 different database products that we group under the database heading. And then there's also BigQuery, as we've discussed, which is actually, even though it is in many ways a relational database system, it is grouped by Google under the analytics tools. And so that is covered in a different certification pathway, which is called data engineer, not this is database engineer. So there is that distinction. Possibly could have chosen different words. Actually, our path is formally, it's called cloud database engineer. The other one is called data engineer without the cloud, without the word cloud. So there is a little bit of distinction there, but they could have probably made it a little more clear. So also, once you have that breadth of looking over all of the products in this section of there are 200 services available within Google, so we're going to look at maybe 15 or 20 of them and cover. That's the breadth aspect of it. But then you also need enough depth so that you know how to use the tools effectively, you know how to build secure and robust systems, and you can work with your customer requirements or your group requirements to understand, like, not only just the best solution, like, okay, maybe I want to run a Postgres open source database, relational database system, but how do I do that? Do I want to install it on a VM, run it that way, or do I want to run it as a managed service under Cloud SQL? You need to know enough about these things. What are the trade-offs involved? And the labs go into this quite a bit, and we can also discuss it at length. So I went through last week I presented this, and I went through all of the course there. This learning path consists of 8 courses, which, if you back out these first 2, really, the tour of the Google Hands-On Lab, really just a way to make sure that you know how to use Skills Boost, right? It's really very simple, and just make sure that you have access to Skills Boost and everything is working right. Okay, so the Google Cloud Fundamentals core infrastructure is something that, if you had already taken other learning pathways, or you got certifications, for example, with Cloud Professional Cloud Architect, or we call PCA, you probably would have covered this. I think this also might be included in the Professional Data Engineer, the PDE track. I'm not sure about that, but I'm almost certain it's covered in the PCA, the Professional Cloud Architect. So this is, for many people, review also. And then what I did is I looked at this Class 03, which is Enterprise Data Migration, is one that we've been working on for a couple of weeks. We gave 2 to 3 weeks of time to work on this, simply because it has about 8 hours worth of video lessons, and it has about 20 hours worth of labs. And I counted the labs as using the time in the outline, and then also kind of rounding up a little bit, because it's often, you may sometimes have to repeat a lab, or if you've been watching the Slack channel, people occasionally ran into trouble, had to repeat a lab a couple of times to get it to work right. So that's expected. You may also find that when we move through into the later weeks, there will be challenge labs. And the difference between a regular lab and a challenge lab is the following: that in a regular lab, you're given step-by-step instructions. Do this, here's the command for it, copy this command, paste it in somewhere else, or explicitly do the following in the console, and it'll give you very clear instructions step by step. And if you follow all those steps, usually the lab should work, right? Not always, but often it will work fine. Then the challenge lab doesn't give you the explicit instructions. It just gives you the goal of, try to create, like it will say, create a Postgres database using Cloud SQL, something high level like that. You then have to work out the steps for doing that. So you either have to, usually the steps for that will have been covered in a previous lab, and so you may want to go back and review earlier labs, or you may also consult the documentation on how to do those steps. Or if you have been very conscientious in learning everything very thoroughly, you might be able to just do it straight away. But generally speaking, you're going to have to either review a previous lab or go to documentation, because that's why they're called challenge labs, and they're not giving you the step-by-step directions for doing it. And so if you think of it as in the way that we think about Terraform, right? It's it's more of a declarative statement of what we need to have done and not an explicit imperative set of commands. I don't know if that analogy helps you or not, but anyway, because of this 20-hour load here of the course 3 being very lab heavy, we've allocated more than 2 weeks for that to have that done. So I had prepared, there's a link here on this Google Sheet, which is just giving you a little bit more detail on that. It's, again, the most important thing here is the number of hours that we're trying to go through over the 10 weeks that we have remaining. And then there are also links here to each overview. So I'm going to present one of these overviews. I don't want to dwell on this sheet too long, but I just wanted to show you that that's out there. Now let me see if I can get back to my slides. Yeah, okay, good. So here's our sneak peek. Oh, well, we're not, oh, hold on. We're not ready for the sneak peek yet. This is the way I've allocated the time over the next few weeks. So what we have here, week 1, 3, 5, 7, all the odd number weeks are the Google supplied slides, and we call these the formal sessions. We're actually in week 2 here, according to this plan. We're in week 2, which is the informal session number 1. So we're between week 1 and week. So our hope is that by next week, you will be able to complete course 3, which is enterprise data migration. And so we would hope that people have certainly done by now, have done this cloud fundamentals core infrastructure. That's kind of a baseline, maybe review for some of you, so maybe you didn't need to do it again. But you know, last week and this week, you should be working on enterprise data migration, and with the goal of trying to finish it by next week. And then if you would just look ahead briefly, right, the next 4 weeks, we have 4 courses. So we have basically between every formal session, we have 2 courses. So which is really 1 course per week, which is, I would say, a moderate pace. Not super difficult to keep that pace up, but it does require that, you know, you make that effort to put in what we estimate probably 10 to 12 hours a week should be sufficient to keep up with this pace. So we spread this out over 12 weeks instead of a 6-week program, as Google suggests. So, and then that leaves us with enough time at the end to go over sample questions, take care of any issues that have come up. And in week 9, you remember I mentioned AlloyDB as a very important thing. So we've given that a whole, you know, a whole session by itself with AlloyDB as being a rather important database offering from Google. Now, let's take a look at where we are just within the migration course. So we had, as mentioned, the tour is just a warm-up exercise, really. The cloud fundamentals, I hope that people have been able to get through that without too much difficulty. And then the starting on the enterprise data migration course 3. And that, so week 1, this is where you should have been last week, or, you know, this is the target for last. So we're now in week 2, where we're in between week 1 and week 3, according to this, right? So we're I can bring up this course overview. I think that's a link. This is the course overview. If you go to this is Skills Boost can be a little tricky to navigate. I've gotten used to it over time. I've learned how to navigate through. But for example, we're in the database engineering path. We're in course 3, which is enterprise database migration, and I'm at the overview, which is equivalent to the little house here. The home page of this course is called the overview, the course overview. And then if you want to see what in there, or you want to look at all the labs, I would suggest that you scroll to the bottom and then open up click these little arrows to open up and expand the contents of each section. And if you want to expand them all, it's easier to start from the bottom and you work your way up. Otherwise, you just have to scroll around a lot more. It's confusing. So I would recommend starting at the bottom. That's if you want to open them all. If you just want to open one and you know where you're going, just go to that one and open it. That's fine also. So I can come back to that in a minute, but I want to see. Yeah, so by next week, which would be week 3 or formal session number 2, as we're calling it, right? Because it's the Google supplied session number 2. We will hope that you finish the course 03, Enterprise Database Migration, and then you should be starting with the next course 4, which is Migrating MySQL. Now, if you have, let me see what's next here. Yeah, this is just a repeat of that earlier slide, giving you, the same information again. Now, we're going to come to this in a minute. I want to go back here to this. If you find that you cannot keep up with this pace that we've recommended, you probably will want to choose some labs. In other words, you may find that you're not able to finish all the labs. I don't want people to, I don't think it'll be too tough to dwell on course 3 while the rest of a majority of us have moved on to course 4 and 5 and so forth. If I were doing it myself, that's what I would do, right? If I were completely self-paced, I would just plow through and do them all in whatever sequence and whenever I felt like it. But if you are trying to stay with our cohort, which I recommend that you do, then you may find that you're in some weeks, you may not be able to do all the labs that are suggested. So in that case, you probably would want to expand all these things and take a look at all the labs and perhaps choose some that you may have to skip, right? Okay, so you could do that based on your job requirements or based on your interests. Let me check one thing here. I had all the labs here. Right, so here I listed all the labs here. There are 11 labs in course 3. So there's the overview and then the 11 labs here. And these are the names of them. So for example, I would suggest if you're running a little behind, you could probably skip this deploying Oracle on bare metal solution. You could skip that lab. It's, as I've noted in Slack last week, it's a difficult lab. It takes a long time. If you are an Oracle customer and you know you are using Oracle, you know who you are already. If you're not an Oracle customer and you're not planning to use Oracle, you could safely skip this lab, but then I would go back and find that corresponding video lesson, just watch that video lesson again and try to get as much as you can from it, but maybe you could afford to skip that lab. Now, you may understand when you do that, you're going to have a small gap when you go into the exam. So you'll have a little gap in your knowledge, but hopefully that's not serious enough to sink you and, completely. They're not going to be 10 questions on Oracle. Okay, they're going to be maybe 1 or 2 at most. And so that's a chance.
Are you showing something on the screen? I don't see anything but your Google page.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's not, yeah, sorry. It's not showing the way I thought it was to me locally. So sorry about that. That's weird, actually. But anyway, I can just show you here on this. Thanks for pointing that out. Let's see, I think that lab is here, migrating Oracle databases to cloud. So yeah, if you could potentially skip this one if you know you're not an Oracle customer, right? You could safely skip that. And so that and likewise, you can if you have to choose between falling way behind the cohort or else skipping a couple of labs, I would just skip the labs, because you can always come back later, right, and do them and fill them in, and you'll be if you fall really far behind, the discussions that we're having won't make a lot of sense to you. I think that's where I end up on this. Okay, let me go back to the slides then. I see my yeah. Oh, okay, that's good enough. Okay, so with that, this is the recommended pacing that we're going to follow for the actually be 12 weeks. Oh no, sorry. By this, sorry, the count stop. This is actually we had an info session, so all these are actually this will be our 12th session, what we're calling week 11, but it's according to the way Google counts, we call it week 11. So it's a little confusing the way the numbering works out here, but you get the idea that every other week we're going to have a formal session, and then these are the targets for completing the courses, so we can talk about them at those meetings. So with that, I would open it up to any questions that are coming up. You know, is everyone comfortable using Skills Boost? Did you get through the fundamentals course okay? Are you where are you in the data migration course number 3? Are you near the beginning, middle, or end? Any of those comments or any other questions that you may have, just this would be a great time to ask them. And if you want to open your mic and just ask the question, that would be fine. If anyone is comfortable with recording, I can pause the recording, but just let me know. Or you can post in the chat if that's better. Oh, library. Well, not sure, Lawrence. I'm not sure what library means, but we're seeing you in the chat. Miguel, what was your question about bare metal? Oh, I see you're in a public library, so you're not allowed to do everything on your browser. Got it. Okay. I'm not sure what the question was about bare metal, so I will say I can make a couple of comments. The way that so bare metal server or BMS is available. Let's see, is there? Oh, okay, creating. I see. Okay, Ashley, I see you're making. So you're in course 3 then. In other words, moving through, stepping through. Yeah, good. I'm assuming there are not a lot of unresolved questions about the video lessons, right? They're self-contained, and the quizzes and exercises in there are pretty self-contained. So I think those are more or less self-explanatory. Is there a way to prevent terminal keeps losing its connection Cloud Shell? No, that's a timeout. The only thing you can do is just go back to it periodically. It's probably like a 3 to 5 minute timeout. So you can just go back into the terminal, into Cloud Shell, type ls or something like that, and just, yeah. Otherwise, if it times out, I mean, you're not losing. You shouldn't be losing anything when it does time out. I think I can't remember. Possibly the environment variables that you've set might get lost when it closes down, so that's a little bit of an inconvenience. What I would do in that case would be just make a little script, like a little bash script that would contain your environment variables, and then you can just replay that. But unfortunately, that is just the way the Cloud Shell works. Now, you do have the ability to store up to 5 gigabytes of data on your Cloud Shell. That will be, well, if you have your own Cloud Shell, as in a trial account or paid Google Cloud account, that 5 gigabytes will be persisted indefinitely. Then in a lab environment, obviously when you close your lab, everything is destroyed. It's completely ephemeral, so everything is destroyed and torn down at the end of the lab session. So then whatever you have stored in your Cloud Shell data will just be lost. Let me go back to the bare metal server solution. So there are two aspects to this. So bare metal server, in the context of Google Cloud in general, is something that can be used in place of a VM. It's almost like buying a dedicated server. It's very similar to a co-hosting environment. It's not typically done in the cloud among the cloud service providers, right? AWS or Google or Azure typically don't give you a lot of options for bare metal servers, but they are available for some customers that have very intense security demands or very special requirements. They do make this bare metal server option available. What in the context of databases, what we're talking about is when we talk about the Oracle BMS, Oracle Bare Metal Server solution, we are meaning the following, that Google doesn't really run Oracle in their own data centers until recently, until an announcement that was made last week. I'll come to that in a minute. But the way it's been up until a week ago is that Oracle only runs on certain kinds of hardware and certain kinds of software. So Oracle really wants to control both the hardware and the VM, if possible, that you're running the Oracle database server on. And that's a requirement. If you want to get Oracle support, you have to run it that way, and it might even be part of the license agreement, in fact. So Oracle has very strictly controlled what hardware and software environments their database server will run in. And the way Google has solved that problem until now has been to actually have a separate data center near the Google data center and certain regions only. And what they do is they put a data center nearby that has a high bandwidth connection with short latency, about, I think it's less than 2 millisecond latency. And that was called the bare metal server solution. So you're actually then getting almost like your own server in the Oracle data center. It's very closely coupled to the Google data center, but it's not physically in the Google data center. Now that's all changing as of a week ago. Oracle has been doing a lot of interesting things with their cloud offerings. There is an Oracle Cloud called OCI, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. It's now, I regard it as the #4 hyperscaler. It's come up a long way in the last couple of years. It has a very high growth rate. There's a strategy there that Larry Ellison is the founder of Oracle. He's still involved in this, setting the strategy. Safra Catz is their CEO. They're doing a great job with their cloud strategy. And a lot of it is heavily based on AI, AI model training, model serving. It has a lot to do with it. But they're also partnering aggressively with the other cloud providers who are actually their competitors. So it's a very interesting dynamic now where you have both competition and cooperation going on at the same time. So for example, Oracle's had for a while something called Oracle at Customer, where you could basically install Oracle hardware on premises and have it look as if it's part of the Oracle's cloud infrastructure. And you can manage it through the Oracle Cloud tools, but it's actually on your on-premises in your data center. Now they've been expanding that. They began to partner with Microsoft Azure last year sometime, a pretty extensive partnership. And then last week, Oracle announced a partnership with Google, and that's being called, I think it's being called Oracle at Google Cloud or something similar to that. And the idea is now, instead of having this separate data center that's, within some number of miles away from the Google regional data center, they're now bringing that Oracle hardware into the Google data center itself. And again, you can run everything as an Oracle database server. You can run it through the Google Cloud Console, and it looks as if it's part of Google Cloud now. And it's a much better solution than the BMS. So as far as studying for this exam, if you get any questions about this at all, it will be about the Oracle BMS solution, and that's what you have the video lesson and the lab go into all that stuff. This brand new partnership will not be covered on the exam for some time. Pretty safe in saying that. So long-winded answer to that question, but that's the bare metal story. Let's see, I'm reading Rich's comment. Complete section 3. Yeah, the bare metal lab is one of the more difficult ones. Yeah, exactly. Then that Oracle lab, I put some pretty extensive notes in the Slack channel. If you go back to last week's Slack conversation, what I recommend doing is, so to do this bare metal thing, you have to grab here's the reason why they do this. The Oracle software is licensed software. It's not open source. It's not freeware at all, right? So it's a licensed product. Oracle allows you, a little bit uncharacteristically, they actually, even though it's licensed software, they let you download it and you can install it locally. You could install that software and run it locally in your development environment at home, for example. You could build an Oracle server. They wouldn't really care too much if you did that, because their Oracle tends to be run in large enterprises, and it's not possible to run a large Oracle database in an enterprise on the sly, right? It just can't be done. So first of all, there are IT people need to get involved, and secondly, there are license audits, and the penalty for violating the license terms on something like an Oracle database is pretty severe. Is not something you want to find out about. So it is, even though it is licensed and highly controlled, they still let you download it, and you can do it. Presumably you could run it inside your house or your basement, without any problems, because they would never know, and no customer would ever know. And so it's a little bit strange to think of it that way, but that's how it is. Now, in order to do that, you have to sign up for Oracle's developer platform, which is called TechNet. That's OTN, Oracle TechNet. So you have to sign up, create an account, download the software, and the way the lab is written, you start the timer of the lab, which I think is pretty long. I think it's maybe 3 hours, but you're starting the timer, and then when you get to that point of downloading the software, you say, oh, now I have to create an OTN account, and I have to go off and do that, and I have to, verify my email in whatever 15 minutes or 20 minutes that takes. And so why would you want to do that while the lab timer is running? So of course you should read the lab through, as I suggested in the Slack. Read the lab through, create your OTN account first, and then, if possible, so what they have you do is you start downloading this big file, and that, like, depending on your internet speed, downloading that big file can take a half an hour. And what they want you to do is start downloading it to your local machine, then grab the URL and go to your cloud environment in the lab and start a curl command so that you can grab your personal copy using your OTN credentials. You can grab that from Oracle. It's kind of like you started the download going into one place and paused it, and then picked up that URL and grabbed it and pasted it somewhere else, so that it's being now transferred into the Google environment. I tried to do it twice. I couldn't get it to work, and I ended up timing out the lab, and it was very frustrating for me. So what I ended up doing, and plus it also takes 30 to 40 minutes. I think it's not fast. It's not fast. So what I ended up doing was I had my own OTN account from years ago, right? So I already had my OTN account. I went to OTN. I downloaded the software, which is the Oracle Database Installer. I put that locally on my PC, and then I pushed that up to Google Cloud in a storage bucket, a GCS bucket, which is something that I own and I control. So it's my own personal GCS bucket. I have to pay for that, right? So that cost me maybe 10 cents, 5 cents or 10 cents, right? But the point is, you have to have a bucket somewhere. And then once you have it in the bucket, then start the lab. And if you copy that file from a bucket over to Google Lab environment, that's going to be very fast transfer because it's cloud to cloud and it's coming out of a bucket. So that'll be very fast. That'll save you a lot of time. It's also reliable. It actually works on the first try. So that's what I recommend. If you looked at this lab and said, you know, for what I'm going to learn from this lab, this is too much work for me, I would totally respect that decision, right? That's why I said, if you're going to kick out one of the labs out of the 11, this would be the one. If you're not using Oracle, you're not an Oracle customer, I would say this lab might be more trouble than it's worth to you. So, and if any of you want help to create a bucket or use a bucket, I could probably help you with that. You know, just DM me on Slack and I can help you. I can either show you how to set up your own bucket, or I could possibly give you access to my bucket for a couple of days, right? So that would get you through the lab. It's a much easier path than trying to like start a download, interrupt it, and grab it, and then redirect it somewhere else. I just didn't really like the way they wrote this lab. I understand why they did it, because they don't want to. It's hard to do everything in the lab environment where everything is torn down at the end of the hour, right? So whatever, you know, when the time is up, the lab environment completely goes away. That just makes it really difficult to work with these large files, and you're always under the clock when you're downloading, and the downloading time is very significant. So you're actually burning up a lot of lab time just downloading a file. It seems sort of pointless to me. So I have my own bucket already, so that was the easiest way for me to do it. But if any of you want help with that, just DM me on Slack, and we'll go from there. So let's see. If we missed the last session, how can we get credits? I'm reading Anita's question here. I've used my monthly credits for another prep. So when you say, if I understand your question, you have, oh, there's some replies coming in, which I'm not seeing. Let me get those. Oh yeah, Kasaba, that's the right question. Are you in any other credit pool? Exactly. So if you're in another workshop series and you have access to their credit pool, you can use any credit pool that you happen to be a part of, right? You don't have to be, and I don't even know how you would like get into our credit pool if you're already in another one, right? And it's not important. It doesn't matter. Once you're in any credit pool, you're allowed to do anything you want in Skills Boost, and you can move around. You can run labs that are not part of any learning path. If you find a lab that's interesting to you, you can just run it. And as long as you're coming to these meetings every week, you should be getting, or going to another meeting on a regular basis, you should be getting into that credit pool. Now, the question I think was, maybe you're not in any credit pool. What I'm told is, and I think Jessica knows this better than I do, but what I'm told is that when you RSVP to our event, and then when you attend the meeting, you will automatically be checked in, and in the background, there's a background process that's running. So Google Cloud should actually see you that you've joined our meeting, and you should automatically get added. Your email should be automatically added to the credit pool. Now, it doesn't always work 100% reliable, but that's the idea of it. How many people are having trouble? How many people are not getting into our credit pool, or they're not in any credit pool, so they're having trouble with Skills Boost? And how many meetings did you join before, I guess, is the related question. It looks like some of you are having that. A couple people are having that problem getting into Skills Boost. Okay. Again, if this is your first session, it seems to have about a 2-day delay, a 1 to 2 day delay. Does anyone on the call know better than I do about how that works? Because when I set up this series, I contacted GDG support, and I wasn't sure if it had gotten connected to the credit pool, but they put everybody who RSVP'd for the info session was automatically added by GDG support. So they put everybody in that was in the info session. And for people who joined the later sessions but didn't go to the info session, I think it's about a 2-day delay. And I would say wait until tomorrow. If you're actually in this, if you're hearing my voice now, you're meeting, you should theoretically get access to our credit pool by tomorrow. If that doesn't happen by tomorrow, then DM me on Slack, and I'll look into it. I can open a support case with GDG support, and they're pretty responsive, so that probably be within 1 day they will get back to me. I think that answers most of the questions here, especially if today is your first session. You will not be getting into the credit pool immediately. It probably should kick in tomorrow, though. Okay, public. What is Abdel? What is the point of that link?
Hi.
Hi.
I use the Hotmail to create my Google skill post as I link it to my Coursera for learning. So
Okay.
I didn't get the credit. I think as I register with the event with my Gmail, okay, as most of GDG must have Gmail to register to the event, not my Hotmail, but my skill post account is created with my Hotmail. Do I need to create a new one? Okay.
Yeah, we had
With
one other.
a Gmail to get the credit. That is the point.
Yeah, we had one other person have this problem with Hotmail. We were not able to get it to work. Actually, we tried. So a lot of things on Google Cloud work better with Gmail, it is theoretically possible to sometimes convert a non-Gmail account to a, like, it's called a Google authentication account, but it doesn't get its own Gmail, right? It is possible to do it, but it doesn't always work, and it's very tricky to do it. So if you don't mind, the easiest solution is to use the same Gmail everywhere. So when you register for these events on our platform, if you can use the same Gmail and then make a skills boost for that. Now the downside of that is that if you already have a skills boost profile.
Yes, I have many years ago, and I have activity. You can see that is my public skill post.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me see what the replies are, if anyone knows better than I do. Oops. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to click on that. I wanted to see those replies. Yeah, Kasaba, I agree with you. The best thing is to use the same Gmail everywhere. But in the case where you already have a substantial profile under Hotmail, then you're going to end up with two different profiles, and its profile would be split. I'm told that it's not possible or not easy to merge the two profiles. So there's one other person from Boston. Her name is Apple, and she's presently in China, and so I could try to connect with her. Actually, she's on Slack too. I could send her a message and see. She actually called the support people, contacted support people, and I think she told me she was not able to get it merged. Ashley, you're saying you did some courses using separate. Yeah, again, another report from Ashley that we're not able to merge those profiles once you've created them. It sounds like something they should be able to do, but they're just probably not willing to do it because it's just too much effort for them. I will take this under advisement, but I think for now the best I can say is you're going to have two profiles. So that's going to be a problem, I guess, that you have to live with. Okay, so it sounds like a few people are making good progress and a few others are not able to really do anything on Skills Boost so far because of the either just joining now for the first time or else because of using a Hotmail or a different Gmail account. So all I can say for now, and the best thing is please sign up for, please use one Gmail account for both the event registration and the Skills Boost. If you check, also put your comment like tomorrow. If you still do not have access by tomorrow, put a comment into Slack. I'll try to follow up, but I mean, we've had 2 or 3 people ask now that have not been successful in merging the accounts, merging the profiles. So I'm not optimistic that we'll be able to do that, unfortunately. Can we get a link to existing sessions? I'm not sure what that means. Can you explain that? Do you mean our meeting sessions here? The recordings of our meeting sessions, or do you mean something else? Yes. If you look in Slack, we have the links there. Both the slides and the video recordings are being posted up to YouTube. There's about a 2 or 3 day, I would say 2 days delay for the YouTube recording. And the slides, usually I get them within 1 day. So yeah, everything will be, the intention is to have everything open like that for every session. Yeah, those links are in Slack. Those links are in Slack. Just go to our channel in Slack is called Cloud Database Engineer English. There are a few other, you can see the few other, let's see, there actually is a Data Engineer English channel in the same Slack workspace. So for those people who were asking earlier about, Lawrence, you were asking about the data engineer path, that's also, there is a Slack channel there. Let me see if there's any updates on when that is starting. No, I don't see any current updates about the starting time of that. Okay, are there any other questions? I think that's all I'm seeing so far. Well, so you can ask questions at the end of the meeting also, but I wanted, for those who are interested, let's see, it's coming up on 7. We probably will, we won't be going until 8 o'clock today. We just always allocate 2 hours in case we need that much time, but we generally do not. I mean, we did in the first week in the info session, but in general, I don't think we're going to be spending the full 2 hours. But I wanted to introduce you to this idea called Shuhari, which I think is, I learned about this from an author, Alistair Coburn, and you see the name as it's printed there. I recommend that you use the American pronunciation, which is Coburn, or the Scottish pronunciation apparently is Coburn. And so, as he says in one of his meetings, you know, this using this pronunciation will save a lot of embarrassment all around. So, yeah, just follow that. He calls it 3 levels of listening, and briefly described as following, detaching, and fluent. And so there's a book that Alistair wrote called Agile Software Development. It's here. This is actually the first edition of the book, where I think he explained it more clearly than in the subsequent second edition. He's a very good architect and was one of the signers of the Agile Manifesto. He has a method called Crystal Method, which is an Agile methodology, and he also wrote a book called Writing Effective Use Cases, which I found his books to be really helpful. I'm going to just, well, I see that this URL is cut off slightly. I'll fix that afterwards before I publish the slides. I'll move that up so that URL is, you can read that. It's almost readable. But anyway, so what do we mean by following, detaching, and fluent? And I've taken this from Wikipedia. And when we pass through different stages of training, we go through Shu, Ha, and Ri. And the people who are at the Shu level, we're just having a lot of trouble understanding what it is that we're doing. So we're looking for very simple methods. We only want one method at a time, and we can only learn one thing at a time. And so we repeat the forms and we discipline ourselves so that it talks about our bodies absorbing the forms that our forebears created. So this is somewhat in the context of martial arts, how you learn the martial arts. And also there's the Japanese philosopher here, which explained this as Shuhari. So we remain faithful to these forms with no deviation. In the second stage, when we go to the Ha stage, we've disciplined ourselves, we've mastered the basics, we're now able to experiment with variations. And we understand that there are a lot of ways to do things, and we begin to experiment with different ways that might be more effective in a different situation. So we're not as rigidly locked into doing things in one particular way that we learned as a novice or as a beginner, but we're now expanding our repertoire of different approaches. And then in the re stage, in the final stage in re, we completely are transcending above all of these ideas, and we just sort of intuitively know how to do things. It's just become ingrained to us, and we just know what to do because we've become an expert. And so I think this is really interesting. I would encourage you to read the full-length article from, I can see that some of my slides are a little bit cut off here, so I'll fix that before I publish them. There's a link here to, let me see, I think I put the link on the, yeah, where I say additional explanation by the author. That actually gives Alistair's explanation of how he explained it in the first edition of the book. He then had some subsequent thoughts, and he gave also the explanation of how he published it in the second edition of this book. As I said, he gives you both at this website. I prefer actually the first edition. It's a little more clear to me. But anyway, that's the basic idea. I will find other ways. There are also a lot of academic people who have studied this problem. You may have heard about in the U.S. Air Force commissioned a study from a couple of professors at UC Berkeley, and they published this so-called Dreyfus. This became known as the Dreyfus model of skills acquisition, and it was done by studying pilots and Army tank drivers and people, military personnel, in other words. And it began, again, it was 5 levels of skill were recognized instead of 3, which we have in Shuhari. There were 5 levels of skill, and it explains how each builds on the other, and each has more capability, and each has the ability to see a bigger picture. Instead of focusing on rules, you become more aware of the situation, and you're able to interact more effectively in that situation because you're not as bound by those rules. And again, in another author who's looked at this is Patricia Benner, who looked at how nurses learn their skills. She also recognized 5 levels of skill. She did her work after the Dreyfus model was published, so might have been influenced by the 5 levels of the Dreyfus model, but it's a little bit different application of these ideas to how nurses gain skills. And one of the distinctions here is know that versus know how. So knowing that is kind of a rules-based, well, what do I do? If a patient presents with these symptoms, what do I do specifically in that case? So a novice beginner nurse might follow a very rules-based approach, whereas someone with more experience would have a better intuition of and be able to look at the big picture and may come to a different conclusion. So I don't want to dwell on these. I just want to point out that there's a fairly rich academic literature here. The one that I found the most influential was the one I started with, which is the Shuhari. It's pretty simple, and it comes from our field of software engineering, so that's why I like that one. There's another one here called The 7 Stages of Expertise in Software Engineering. It's from this author, Paige Jones, and it describes the 7 levels, in this case, 7 levels of skill. And I notice, I just want to call out, the levels are called, begin with innocent, and they go up through researcher. And I want to call out the word innocent here, and I'll explain that in a minute. But the beginning level of software engineering is called innocent. I think it's kind of interesting. And I want to bring out one more thing, which is called, oh, sorry, there's yet another group of academics that study. These authors talk about the role of metacognition and how experts solve problems differently from novices. And again, this idea of metacognition is understanding while you're actually doing something, you're also kind of stepping back and looking at how you yourself are interacting in that scenario or in that situation. So you're not only doing something, you're also thinking about what it is that you're doing and how you're fitting into the whole thing. And this leads to, this is one of the reasons why experts are able to often come to better decisions than novices. And so again, there's an academic literature here. I don't want to go into all this, but I just want to make you aware that there are 3 or 4 or 5 groups that have studied similar types of analysis about how we acquire skills. I'm going to tie this back to, as you might be able to guess, I'm going to tie this back to what we're doing here in our learning path. I do want to bring out one more thing, which is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. This is not the, this is a cartoon version of that I like. You can get a more formal description of this by going on to Wikipedia. The actual observations that are called Dunning-Kruger are actually a little less interesting than this cartoon. I think is quite appealing to me. I love this idea called Child's Hill, where like, what do you think you know about something, and how much, the idea here is how much do you think you know about something, and how much do you really know about something. And the Child's Hill is called, I'm pretty damn sure I know a whole lot about this, and I'm feeling really great about it. And then after a while, you tumble down the hill because you realize you know next to nothing about this new field, and you have a lot of learning ahead of you. And when you get into that, you tumble down the Child's Hill, you end up in the insecure canyon. And I just kind of like the way that this cartoon puts these ideas together. It's kind of humorous. But I've seen this. I'll go in. I'll explain a few situations where I've seen these things play out. In the Dunning-Kruger effect that I've seen some pretty large companies move to the cloud, and they're struggling with controlling the costs of their cloud spend. They're controlling their cloud spend. And I work in a field called cloud FinOps, which is about, we sometimes call it engineering efficiency, or just using the cloud effectively rather than going in and just starting up resources without any governance. And what I realized is that in some companies, there is this reason that there is a kind of a thought process that says, well, we already know what we're doing. We've been building apps for a while. We know how to run our things on premises. We're good Linux system administrators. We understand VMware. So how hard could cloud be, really? Let's just move to the cloud. It's easy. It's easy to spin up resources. We'll just jump in and do it. And then a couple of years later, these companies find that their cloud bill, is way too large. It's much bigger than they were expecting, and if you start looking at the cloud bill, it's very easy to identify a lot of wasted resources, things that are running that are not turned off, things that are running when they're not being used. And just the very short version of this is that in the ideal situation, we say in the cloud you pay for what you use, but in actuality that's not true. And none of the cloud vendors, if you really ask them, would say that that's literally true. It's really you pay for what you provision, right? So if you start a VM and you have provisioned that VM and you leave it running, Google doesn't have any way of knowing whether you're using that for some purpose or you just started it because you might want to use it in an hour, or you're going to use it tomorrow morning and you just wanted to make sure that it was running when you came into work. I don't know why you would start it that much ahead of time, but Google doesn't know, and in fact, they don't really care, right? What they care about is you asked for a VM, they gave you a VM and it's running and you're paying for it, right? So even if you're using, it's provisioned and it's running, you're paying for it, even if you're not using it. And so it's very easy if you don't have a good control on FinOps and a good engineering culture that includes thinking about the cost of running things, it's very easy to overspend. And I've traced a lot of this back to this Dunning-Kruger effect, where when I looked at the, in some situations where cloud spend is going out of control, you also see that many other things are not being done very well. So a lot of other software engineering practices are not being followed very carefully. And it's just a cultural thing where it hasn't been established that good policies lead to, better security, better networking, more efficiency, and more control and spend. So I'm kind of surprised by how prevalent this is in some companies. But anyway, this is part of what explains how it happens. So I wanted to have a chance to watch this clip on YouTube from the Karate Kid. Some of you may, this is the old version of Karate Kid movie, right? You may understand where Daniel-san on the right has been learning all these very basic tasks like waxing polishing the cars, painting the fence, all these things that seem to have no relevance to his becoming a karate expert. And then this is the scene in the movie where his instructor on the left helps him put all these things together. So he's moving from Shu level, where he's just following rules and doing very basic maneuvers. He's now moving to Ha level, where he's synthesizing, putting all these things together. I don't want to play the clip now. It's a little bit long. And if we put the clip into our recording, we will get flagged for issues, and I don't want to have that happen to us. So I'll avoid doing that. So why do I bring all this up? Because in our certification workshops, we're open to anyone interested in Google Cloud at any skill level, right? We give you recommendations for prerequisites, but we're not enforcing them. And we suggest that you have some experience with cloud or some experience with database, but in fact, we're open to, if you feel like you can join our group and participate and learn from it, we're happy to have you. And you could have any skill level as long as you're interested in the end goal. And so what we're trying to do here as session leaders is we're meeting everybody where they are. And we're here to help you learn. We're here to help whatever level you're at. We want to help you improve and get up to the next 2 or 3 levels above that. Maybe that's good enough to pass the exam, or maybe you're not quite ready to take this exam yet. So in any case, we're here to help you. We're not going to judge you or evaluate you. Now, when you take the exam, Google's evaluating you, so that's your concern at that point, but that's not what we're here to do. We're here to help everybody learn effectively and try to meet people where they are. So in other words, the way we present things, now I can't control how all the video lessons are presented. I hope that they are building from basic to more advanced concepts. I think they are, but when I talk with students or learners or participants in these workshops, I always try to understand where people are, and I follow this idea of Shuhari. In other words, if you're just beginning with cloud, I'm not going to present you 5 different ways to do something. I'm not going to tell you about every option available. I'm going to ask you a more focused question. What is your goal for today? Here's how I can help you solve that problem for today. That's kind of a shoe level conversation, right? If you know what I mean. It's so I'm not overwhelming you. I'm giving you a solution to an identified problem and helping you work your way through that. Now, as you move along, you will want to know more and more about that. So that's how our lessons are built in this course. You saw that, for example, just take the running a database. Let's just pick MySQL as a popular open source database. You can run that on VMs. You can run that inside GKE. You can run that as a Cloud SQL managed service. So why do we have all this complexity and choice and 3 different ways of doing the same thing? That's a little confusing for someone who's just beginning, right? So if you're at a shoe level, you're saying, well, there's a lot of complexity here. That's really kind of those 3 options are already getting into the second level, the hard level, right? So it's like, okay, I asked you, like, how do I start a MySQL database? And you gave me 3 different answers. That's confusing. But I hope the way that the material was presented and the way the labs are building one on top of each other, I hope you can see that there's a reason for doing it, and it's because the more you're willing to do yourself, the more control you have over your database platform, right? And if you're willing to cede some of that control to Google and have things run in a kind of a standardized way, you can give up some of your control, and that can make the administrative burden a little easier, but there is a trade-off there. We're going to talk more about this next week when we actually review this course, but I just want to give you, in the context of this Shuhari, how this is working out for us. Okay, so the other thing I want to bring out here that's very important is, if you are new to cloud, you may be an expert in some other domain, right? So you may be a database expert and you're just moving now to Google Cloud for the first time. So this is a situation that I was in 2017, right? I was very much an expert in data warehousing, but I didn't know very much about cloud at all. So I had to think about how I'm going to learn, how am I going to approach learning about cloud in an effective way. And what I understood is that because I'm an expert in another field, I'm pretty good at assessing what it takes to learn about cloud, because I've already learned a lot about some other field within software. And so what I'm suggesting is that you also learn about how people learn about how you think about how you yourself learn, and your expertise in another domain can become your superpower for learning about cloud, or learning about databases, or learning about this combination of skills that we're learning in this learning path here. So there's more that I could say about this, but I think that's kind of the nutshell version of it. And if you find a mentor or a study group that understand this approach, as I hope you're getting an idea that we understand that here. When you ask us questions on Slack, we're going to try to give you an answer that's appropriate to your level. If you're already an expert, we won't bother you with simple things. If you're more at the novice level, we're not going to overwhelm you with 10 different options. We're going to just focus on, how do I solve this problem today that I'm trying to solve? Okay, so I think that is all I want to say about this. I did have some other examples from my own experience that I could chat with some of you if you want to know more about this, but it's a little hard to explain this, but I would recommend that you go back to those links that I put at the beginning of this little talk, and the way that Alistair explains it, it's quite good. It's quite clear. He gives a lot of examples, and I think it's a very good concept to carry with you. It can help you both in how you learn this new material. It might help you in how you approach job interviews. It might help you in how you actually do your job at work. You know, it's always good to kind of meet people where they are in a conversation or in achieving some common goal. And I think if you understand your role in that partnership, I think it will make you a better software engineer overall. So that's all I'm going to say about this. When you get to this, if you step through the slides that we will publish by tomorrow, make sure you go to this last slide and click on this link to badge. You'll then get a badge in Credly that just says that you joined this event. I'm not sure if you do this every week that you'll get a different badge every week, but you'll at least, maybe you just have to do it once. I think some of you did it last week already. So I think that's the end of the formal presentation here.